Hello and welcome to the GVP. This is going to be our special episode review of Knives Out. I am the Adam Hart caster, Dylan Must, and I'm joined by your friendly neighborhood caster, Kirkland Patzer. Kirkland, how are you doing tonight, my friend?
Heyo, I'm doing great. I'm excited to be here. This is
Mm-hmm.
a very special cast,
And
just the
by
two
be
of
here,
us.
you mean in your own home. This is
Be here in my own home.
yeah.
Yes, this is definitely the first time I've ever had
I-
a cast like
Is it a
this,
nice
and
change of pace, do you think?
like it's definitely honestly I like it. It's very comfortable. I'm wearing
Uh-huh.
PJs right now. No
Yeah.
spoilers,
I
but
haven't worn PJs on a cast in like 3 years, but I definitely remember
yeah,
those days fondly.
I can safely say I've never done that because we've never casted in my place before. But so this
Uh,
is this is fun. But
yeah.
yeah, no, I feel comfy. I'm I'm,
Mm-hmm.
I'm doing good.
Yeah.
Excited to
Well,
be here with you.
we'll see how it goes because normally we can just look in each other's eyes, and I feel like a lot of podcasting, right? You like that communication of like who's gonna say something next kind of comes from just
Yeah.
the visual stimuli, but we don't really have that today. I
No,
have your
no,
Discord,
that's very
I have
true.
your Discord picture, but that's not you.
Yeah, I can like see you in my mind when I close my eyes, but it's
Mm-hmm.
not the same.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And thinking about this, I know we're on a little tangent already, but thinking on this, I was thinking about like what other casts have just me and you done, and I can only think of one episode that only me and you have recorded. Do you remember what that is?
Was is that the No Man's Sky review?
Yeah, No Man's Sky.
Yeah.
Shoutouts
And
to
then
that game.
the other the I get actually it wasn't the two of us. I think it was you, me, and Jessica, right, for Ready Player One.
Oh God, I can't. Maybe I don't know, dude. That's I feel like
Yeah.
that was a year ago, but it feels like forever ago.
Feels like a long time.
Yeah.
Yeah. But anyways, we're here for a
Anyway,
totally
we're
different
here.
movie.
Yeah, we're here to bring the knives out. Ryan Johnson's
Knives Out.
newest flick, a classic murder mystery. Whodunnit. In terms of things to plug, not a whole lot to plug. You can check out Travis's The Irishman review. Martin Scorsese's new Netflix movie. I'm gonna check that out probably on this weekend. Also, every week we're doing our Mandalorian review. Next week I guess I don't know. I think this is coming out on the Friday. So tonight, if you're listening to this on the day, you can check out episode 4 Mandalorian review as well as some Game Awards predictions. So yeah, we have some fun casts all around. But today we're going to be talking about Knives Out. So this one,
Knives Out.
yeah, Knives Out. This one's interesting because for a movie like this, like a murder mystery, right? The whole basis of these movies is all about surprising like plot twists or like big reveals. So obviously we're going to start with the spoiler-free section, but I think it's hard to say a whole lot about these kind of movies in terms of plot without spoiling stuff. So I think we'll try and be
Yeah, I
very light
agree.
on spoilers at the front here, but then we'll do a spoilers section as well, like we normally do. So I'm gonna toss it over to you. What did you think of this movie? Or just an overall spoiler-free thoughts?
Yeah, overall, like you already mentioned, it's probably maybe pretty quick because it's tough
We don't
to
want to
beat around
ruin
the
it for
bush on a
anyone.
movie like
Yeah.
this. Yeah, exactly. But overall, honestly, I thought it was a very enjoyable film. Is it definitely was just a fun time. I was going into it expecting like if anyone out there has seen like the original like Clue movie where it's like it's very serious. There is no like comedy in there. It's just basically you're trying to I guess murder mystery trying to find out who did it. But
Mm-hmm.
it was uh it was definitely not like that. It was interesting too because there's a lot of obviously there's big names in this film, but like very like dramatic actors in there, and like
Mm-hmm.
I just felt like they were all playing like just ridiculous characters, and I loved it. Like they just I felt like everyone did such a good job with
Yeah,
the
definitely.
roles that they had, and so yeah, like overall I had lots of fun with that. I was yeah, I don't want to I don't want to go into the spoiler section,
Yeah, I've got to be
but
careful.
I don't know, like I thought it was the humor, I felt like majority of it worked for me. Like it
Mm-hmm.
was very modern. Like they were talking about like very like pop culture sort of things, and just like things that are happening in like today's day and age, and I
Yeah,
thought that was pretty fun.
you can definitely tell that Ryan
um
Johnson's been like surfing on Twitter and stuff and seeing the
oh
hot
yeah,
topics of the last
he's been
year.
reading those tweets, yeah. Making his comments on it, but
Yeah.
yeah, so the comedy majority of it worked for me. I really loved like basically all the characters. There were some that I felt like they could have had a bigger role in it, like Chris Evans' character. I don't know, like obviously uh I don't know, I felt like they're kind of saving his character
Mm-hmm.
for
Yeah,
yeah,
kind of
no,
introduce him.
again, I don't want to go to
Yeah, I mean, so
spoilers.
you want to do that sometimes is introduce characters later because then it kind of reconceptualizes what you've seen so far. And I can
Yeah.
definitely agree. I mean, as we're reviewing, talking about all these Marvel movies. I think we're both really excited to see Chris Evans in something because I don't think I've seen him play
100%,
anything but
100%,
Cap
yeah.
in a decade, right? So it's
Oh
like,
no, it's totally true. It's like the only movies I can really think of him in are like obviously the Marvel
yeah,
movies and then like Fantastic Four. I
yeah,
know that's
just
not
comic book
necessarily
stuff.
like yeah,
And
that's funny.
and I think that even you get that vibe from the trailer that he's going to be a bit of an asshole in this movie.
Oh,
So I
totally.
think we were both excited to see a bit of that as well.
No, totally. Yeah, that and just like what you said, like I was just excited to see like a new role for Chris Evans. Obviously, he's been Cap, and like that's just like a Boy Scout, just like goody two shoes, and he's been that role for like a decade now.
Mm-hmm,
So
mm-hmm,
it was I was excited going to it and see. And overall, like I said before, I was just happy with basically everyone's performance.
mm-hmm. Definitely.
There's some really cool like cinematography shots I found just like with the aesthetic of the house and just. I guess you could say like majority of the movie kind of takes place in this manor. It's
Mm-hmm.
basically a mansion, and
Yeah.
I don't know. It was just in those types of like manor type houses. There's like artwork and just so much like unique things in there, and I really love like the location for it,
Yeah, definitely.
the scenery, and yeah. But obviously I want to just talk about the spoiler stuff, so maybe I'll just
Mm-hmm.
dish it over to you.
Yeah, I guess the last thing I'll ask you is, would you recommend it, or would you recommend it in the
Mm,
theaters at least, or is it something you
yeah.
wait watching on Netflix? Talk about it with your friends as you're watching it, or what kind of vibe do you think it is?
Yeah, I don't think you need to see this in theaters. I forgot to even ask you, like outside of cast, but like how packed was your theater? Because ours wasn't too busy.
Really,
There
ours
was only.
was ours was pretty much sold out. Honestly, like
Oh
maybe
wow,
the
okay,
front two rows weren't, but keep in mind we're also at the plaza, so like the comfy seats, right? So there's
right,
less
yeah,
seats per
the
theater,
comfy
but yeah,
seats.
it was bumping, and it was actually kind of a disaster. I was showing up to the theater. I hate the Cineplex app. It's just like Adam.
Oh, it's
The Adam app
garbage.
is
Yeah,
great, right? But trying to use the Cineplex app is just a mess. Like we do it because the theater's nicer, but I could not get my ticket. I could not find it. I was kind of freaking out. But as we got there, there was no one at the ticket booth, so we just walked right in. So that kind of ended up working out.
that's perfect. Yeah, um, yeah. Sorry. Oh yeah, I forgot what you asked. So would I recommend this to my friends? Absolutely. I think if you're a fan of like the murder mystery and just like me personally, I really love movies that like you don't know really what's going on until the very end, and then they lead you down a certain route, and then it's totally like polar opposite once you think you know you're going somewhere. So I've always loved those types of movies. So even just like seeing the trailers and finding out what type of movie this was going into it, I got super excited. And then you throw on just the glorious cast that they have,
hmm
and I was so hyped. And yeah, like I don't want to say it killed my expectations because it like I was expecting obviously a more serious movie and like that sort of things because I wasn't let down by that. It was just it took me in a different direction and I liked it still.
hmm
I'm not saying like I liked it less, but if you're a fan of obviously murder mystery parties or the game Clue, I think you'll like it. It's like I mentioned already, it's definitely got more humor in there. So
Yeah,
I
for
don't know
sure.
if yeah, I don't know. I feel like majority of
It's an
people will like the
interesting
humor.
type of humor because it's not just like characters dropping one-liners. It's more just like the scenario that they find themselves in, or like as you see in the trailer as well, like Chris Evans just being that bad guy in itself is just funny, right? Because we're so used to
Yeah.
him not being that kind of character.
Oh, totally. And like that's what I was gonna say as well with like Tony Coilette's. Is that how you say her name?
I think Tony
The joke.
Collette, yeah, yeah,
Yeah, Tony Collette. I was like I think she was like my favorite out of all of them honestly because
mm-hmm.
the last thing I'd seen her in was
Of
Hereditary and this
course,
is
yeah,
just such a different role for her. Like she's just so like obviously she's just like a Instagram socialite or whatever you
right,
want to
right.
call those types of people
Good way
and
to
she
put
was
it.
just so good at that role and I just loved it.
Uh-huh.
I like basically all of her humor just worked for me.
Yeah,
I loved her. So like you said though like it's not one liners like it's just the colorful characters that they have and just
yeah,
the situations that they're in. I love that stuff. So like obviously like for my personal friend group I would definitely recommend this
yeah.
to basically
That's good.
everyone. But like I said I don't think you have to see this in theaters. It's not like it's um like a Blade Runner type movie where it's just like it's so visually pleasing or like just an epic. I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like those types of movies I'd want to see in theaters because you're getting like the full theater experience. Whereas this one, you can definitely watch with Netflix, with your friends or family, and
Yeah.
I think everyone would enjoy it.
Yeah, fair enough. Yeah, I think I'm in a very similar boat as you on this one. Like, it definitely went a different direction than what my expectations were, but it
Mm-hmm.
still was exactly what I wanted, if that makes any sense.
Yeah.
I was expecting it to just be like a fun time at the movies, like something just kind of simple. Like obviously there is like, you know, little details to pick up on and stuff, but overall it's just a fun ride from start to finish. And like
Yeah.
I'm obviously a big fan of bluffing games. Like I love Mafia and
Oh
Avalon and
yeah.
all this stuff. Like
Avalon.
I just eat it up. So from that perspective, I love these kind of movies because it kind of hits that niche for me, you know, and I like to try and figure stuff out, but also just see how other people are figuring it out and whatnot. And from that perspective, I loved it. I just found it so interesting, even though it
Oh,
was
totally.
different than I was expecting. Like it's not just a straightforward murder mystery, and it doesn't do anything super weird and awkward like you know, Murder on the Orient Express, which I was not a fan of, another
Yeah.
murder mystery from a couple years ago. But I really wanted to touch on that, just the cast, right? As you mentioned, like a lot of these people I've seen, but I've seen them in only like kind of like one thing. So it was interesting to kind of
Yeah.
get just a little bit more of a repertoire for these people, like kind of add another movie to my archives in terms of what I've seen them in. So like Anna de Armas, I loved her in Blade Runner. I was really excited to see her
Right.
in
Yeah.
this one. Toni Collette as well from Hereditary. Even Michael Shannon, who I've seen
Oh
him in
yeah.
one thing in Shape of Water. Maybe I've seen him in other things, but yeah, Shape of Water. I thought he was great in that. And then Chris Evans as well, right? Like I've really like yeah, a lot of movies I've seen him in, but it's the same character for so long.
Jamie Lee Curtis as well. That's another
Yeah.
big name.
And then who else? Like I guess Catherine Langford, who's from 13 Reasons. You know, seeing her in something else was kind of
Right.
fun.
Yeah.
And then even the younger kid from one of the kids from It, it was cool to see him in something else as well.
Yeah. Yeah.
Uh,
Totally. I was trying to remember where where I remembered him from, and then like
yeah, he
basically right at the end of the movie, I'm like, oh, it's it. Totally.
yeah, definitely. So it was really fun to see all these people again, and even a couple more. And the only one that I honestly haven't seen a movie of, this one might be surprising, is Daniel Craig, because I haven't seen any of those James Bond movies, and I've just never seen him in anything else. So this is kind of
Oh
the
wow.
first thing I'd seen him in, and he's doing a very like over the top kind of accent as well. So it was fun to see him in there. But I loved the cast. It was a very strange mix of people. It felt like at least, but it worked so well. And as you mentioned, like kind of like caricatures. Like Toni Collette's character is very
Oh
much
yeah.
over the top, and I just was eating it up. It was so much fun to see, like all of them. It felt like was perfectly cast, and the writing is really good as well. So from
Yeah.
that perspective, I really enjoyed it.
Yeah. Another thing I wanted to just comment on
Mm-hmm.
just the cast is like they're so like different too, like they just seem like such like individuals, I don't know, like just a brief like comparison would be like the characters that you have in like Overwatch or a game like that, where it's like none of them are the same, like they're their own like character,
Right.
and they're just so unique, and when you just throw them in an ensemble like this, like Walt's character was just so different from Jamie Lee Curtis's character.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And then you have like Marta, who's just like the like doing good to everyone. It's just
Mm-hmm.
like very like innocent and everything. And then you have like Daniel Craig, just very like they kept calling him the KFC like Colonel, because he just had such a southern accent, which
Yeah.
I was just not expecting. I don't know, like I think I had heard it in the trailers, but it was just like I kind of forgot about it, and
Right.
then it was just. Yeah, it was funny. Like at first, I was like, "Oh wow, like this is definitely interesting." Because last thing I'd seen him in was James Bond, and
Mm-hmm.
obviously he has a British accent in that. And but I think it worked on me the more the movie went on.
Mm-hmm.
And then just back to the characters, like Tony Collette. I keep saying Collette.
Yeah. I don't know.
Tony
You're drawn
Collette.
to that name.
I am. I'm giving her a French name, but like her character was just so like just like I feel like everyone has seen like a person like that on
Yeah,
Instagram,
she
where they're just
embodied
like an
it perfectly
influencer.
too. Even
Oh
like
yeah, she was so
even like down to the costume design, like what she was wearing, as well as like I mean she in the movie, like her character is she like sells makeup or has a makeup company, and she's just like it's just really caked on her face too. So it's
oh
all
yeah.
there, right? Visually, the acting, the writing. Yeah, just super
Yeah,
consistent.
so I thought it was they did a really good job of just like giving each character like their own like I don't know personality, and like fleshing them out to a certain extent. And I just thought they did such a good job with that. And like when they were having scenes of them all together, it was just I loved it because it was just like
Yeah,
polar opposites just clashing so many times. It was fun.
definitely. Um, what else do I want to touch on here, non spoilers wise? I think what I'd say is I really like the soundtrack as well. Like there is, a there I like some of the song choices they have, but also just the score in certain moments really adds to that intensity or the tension. It's simple and it's really not like used a ton. So when it comes to like Golden Geeks time, I don't know if it's like a top score of the year by any means,
Yeah.
but I still thought it worked really well for the themes that this movie is tackling. And then, as you mentioned, the cinematography, I agree with that as well. Like, just the aesthetic of the mansion is really nice. Like the color schemes of it, but then even the shots used, like there's some really creative cinematography there as well. And obviously,
Yeah.
that's kind of core to this genre, right? Because you have to have there has to be this fun. Like the best movies in this genre are ones that have like good character moments where your detective character is figuring stuff out based on details, but also the viewer can pick up on little things as well. Because there's certain things that like only
No,
the
I
detective
totally
in the
agree.
movie is going to be able to pick up on.
And then yeah, like you
Yeah.
said, like there's some definitely like some cool shots that were used that like definitely like stuck with me. Like there was one where if you just said the actress's name, but like the 13 Reasons Why chick,
Mm-hmm,
she I think she's like on the phone and there's like a light like on her eyes or something.
right,
And it's
right.
just like a really like unique shot. And there's just a handful that I really thought stood out and just were
Definitely.
awesome.
Yeah, and I think in terms of recommending this, I don't think you need to see this in theater. I think you'd get a lot of it from your couch at home. But at the same time, if you're going to the movies and you don't know what to watch, I think this is a good just like anyone would kind of enjoy this movie. Not that every single person will love it, but I think anyone could at least have some fun with it. And it's I don't know, I guess it's like around 2 hours long, maybe a little under, maybe a little
It's
over, but
it's 210.
okay, is it? Yeah, to me,
Yeah.
I didn't really acknowledge the length of it all during it. Like the pacing is really solid throughout. Like I didn't feel like it dragged at any moments, and I didn't feel like it skipped over anything. It just felt like the perfect pacing as well. So
Yeah, I would agree. I think near the end I was kind of like, oh, like how long have we been in this? 5 weeks, 2 days, who knows? But overall, I agree with you. I thought the pacing was good.
yeah,
It's not like they stuck in one area for too long. Like they made the movie progress
right.
in a pretty good manner.
Yeah,
And
I think non spoilers wise, that's kind of all I want to say because plot wise, it's fun. It's interesting, but I really don't want to say anything because
yeah,
just the
exactly.
nature of the genre. So do you have any other details you want to touch on non
No,
spoilers?
I don't really
Okay.
have any spoiler free notes. So
All right. Well,
I think we're good to go.
let's cut right into it. So your warning is right about now. Spoilers, spoiler territory is upon you. I want to start with maybe in a surprising spot. I want to start with the trailer actually, because I think the trailers
Okay.
did a great job of showing off all the people that are in this movie and making you interested from that point of view, and showing what kind of movie it is, classic kind of murder mystery. But I think it did a great job of subverting some expectations. So one thing from the trailers, I saw Anna de Armas in there. I'm like a big fan of hers after Blade Runner. I'm like,
Oh yeah.
okay, I'm excited for her, but I'm kind of worried because I don't think she has a single line in any of these trailers. So is she just gonna be like some small minor character on the side? But no, she's actually the star of this movie, right? Like this, she
Yeah.
has by far the most screen time. She like even your detective character, like she's pretty much in every single scene that he is in, and
Yeah.
she really, yeah, she is by far like the starring performance in this, and that really like that just really surprised me because I didn't really expect her to be in it a whole lot. So I think they did a great job with the trailers there of kind of holding back on their main character, but still making it an enticing movie that you want to go see.
Yeah, no, I totally agree with you because like if they I don't know, like if they had showed her being like the main character, like and she's not the investigator, I don't
Mm-hmm.
know, like I feel like you would kind of have some suspicions from like the get-go that she's obviously intertwined with it, and
Yeah.
instead of just thinking that she's another like person that was in the house, like, oh, she was the nurse, like who did it? Was it the nurse? Was it the brother? Like, just
Mm-hmm.
like one of those characters, not like, okay, this is your main person, we're gonna be following the story from her perspective.
Yeah,
And
definitely.
no, I totally agree with you. I thought the trailer did such a good job at doing that, and in today's day and age, there's so many times that the trailers just show too much, and it's disappointing sometimes, especially if they show you like the big wow moments that you're kind of hoping to get in the film.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah,
yeah, shouts out to them
and
definitely for
and
that.
that actually leads perfectly because the other thing with the trailer is it really doesn't it makes you think that it's going to be like a straightforward murder mystery, or there's like a bunch of people in a mansion, very Clue-esque, like you're mentioning,
Yeah.
and it's just like more details are found out, more motivations, more this, more that, and then there's a big reveal at the end where the detective lays it all out. But that's not really the case here, right? Like it's kind of
No, not at
different
all.
pacing because you actually get the reveal of how he died or how he got killed. Like pretty much, I want to say 1/3 into the movie. Would you say, or maybe?
Oh,
It definitely less than half. So
Yeah.
I would say like a third into the movie, and then it's almost like 3 acts in that kind of reveal happens, and then you enter this. Well, there's honestly it kind of feels like the interest turns to, okay, how is the detective going to figure out that she was responsible or she was involved in it? But then in the
Yeah.
last third, it kind of shifts to, okay, there's actually some more funny business going on. There's some more unexplained things that she's not responsible for. What's going on here? And then that's where it goes. It feels like the last third is the kind of more classic murder mystery where you're trying to figure out those or piece it all together. But then the first 2/3 are very different sequences. So I thought that was interesting the way it mixes up the genre, I guess you could say.
Yeah, I totally agree with you because like I said, like going into this movie, I was kind of expecting that like classic Clue movie where
Mm-hmm.
you don't know anything till basically like the very end. But in this one, like you just mentioned, like in the first third, you find out how the main or yeah, what was his name again? Like Thornby was their last name, but what was
Thro-
his first name?
Thromby,
Like
you're yeah,
Thornby,
Harlan,
yeah.
Harlan Thromby. There you go.
Harlan, yeah. So
Yeah.
you find out how he met his demise, but like so as soon as that happened, I was kind of like, oh, this is kind of weird. Like
Mm-hmm.
this is totally a different movie. Like this isn't like in that moment, I was like, this isn't even really a murder mystery. It's basically just like we're gonna be following this impending doom. Like
Yeah.
how long can Marta like hide her secret, or like how long is it gonna take until Daniel Craig can like find out that
Piece
she
it
was
all
the one that
together.
did it,
Yeah.
right? Like yeah, like so I had that perspective like from that point on, but then obviously like you said, like once you get into like the last third of the movie, like it totally goes back to like a classic murder mystery. Like, oh no, this is totally different than like the format that we laid out and the picture that we painted for you, like the
Mm-hmm.
viewer. And I just thought that was really cool because, like I said, like I wasn't necessarily like actually, yeah, I will say I was a little taken away like once they showed that it was just Marta that was the
Mm-hmm.
one that like drugged him or
Yeah.
everything, and
Yeah,
so
because
yeah,
that's kind of like in these movies. That's always there is various reveals that are going to happen, of course, but that's always the big reveal. And so the fact that it happens early on is kind of weird. Uh, and I don't know. I guess I was. I think I was kind of in the same boat as you, where I was like, okay, I don't know if I like the direction this is going, but then it kind of
yeah,
recovered like pretty quickly because I don't know, you find out after maybe another few like 10, 15 minutes that there's definitely some more like tomfoolery going on, and figuring
no,
it out
totally.
it becomes like the fun part. So I don't know, I guess I liked it from the perspective of being something different, but I can definitely see how that could rub someone the wrong way, and maybe for some people
Yeah.
like it wouldn't be able to like recover at that point, like maybe that's just like I'm not really invested in this anymore.
Oh, totally. And like I said, like it did kind of like take me away from it just a little like tad, and then I was
Mm-hmm.
like, whatever. Like this movie's fun. It's not like I'm gonna walk out or anything
Yeah.
like from that moment. But like it's a good time. It's just oh, I was expecting more of this, and then obviously once you get into like that like the later. I don't know the last third of the film, or like whenever like the big reveals are going on.
Yeah.
Even before that, actually, it was more like, oh wow, this is totally like different from
Yeah.
like the story
I
that was laid out
I
in the
think
beginning. I thought that was cool.
and I think I don't know, one problem I think it does arise from that is that I didn't really feel like I had I didn't really feel too suspect on most of the characters throughout this movie, right? Because once that reveal
Yeah,
happens, then a lot of what you've spent the movie doing, like, or the first third of that movie, like, is just, here's a little like breadcrumb that you can follow, or here's like why the brother's a little bit sus.
yeah,
Here's why, like Jamie Lee Curtis's character maybe has some motivations or something. But once that reveal happens, it kind of takes away all of those, and then later you can kind of repurpose them, and maybe they kind of make sense again. But it feels like for most of the movie, like at least the his three, like Harlan's three children, and then even like Tony Collette's character, who's kind of like the daughter-in-law, I guess she is. Like it doesn't. I
yeah,
never really felt suspect of any of those four throughout the rest of the
yeah.
movie. So I don't know.
No,
I guess that aspect of like trying to figure out who did it, or or why this piece of evidence is like incriminating. Like even from that perspective, I didn't find it as enjoyable. Like I wasn't switching around a whole lot. I still found it interesting to like see how the reveals happened, but I can definitely, I don't know. I guess that's maybe one con I could knock against it is it doesn't feel like everyone's a player, and some of the characters do just kind of fall off in that last half or last
Yeah,
third, I
no,
guess you could say.
that's very true, and that's a really good point that you brought up because yeah, it's basically like as soon as that reveal happens, it's like okay, well, these characters they just feel like they're side characters,
Mm-hmm.
like they're in there for the comedy, they're in there to just be a player in this game, but like I don't know, from even like before like the reveal of Marta, like I never really suspected Jamie Lee Curtis to be the one doing it,
Right.
right? Like maybe her motive is
Yeah,
like,
she of all
okay,
of them
well
has like
she gets like
the least there.
yeah, like I felt like she had the healthiest relationship out of all of them, like with the dad.
Yeah.
Like Walt's character, obviously he got fired. I just love Michael
He's
Shannon in
like,
this
if
film.
anything, the most like obvious red herring, but even then I
Yeah.
still never really felt like he had motivation to kill him. Like
Yeah.
I guess the motivation is that the only person who knew he was fired was his father, right? So if he had
Hmm.
killed him, then he wouldn't share it. But I don't know. It didn't really, to me, feel like it was enough
Yeah, and then
information.
like the other players in the game were actually, yeah, like the one person I thought might have like in the beginning of the movie, I thought he might have like a motive for it was Jamie Lee Curtis's husband. I think is I forget his name in the film.
Richard, I'm on
Yeah,
IMDb.
Richard. So he
Richard.
was the one. Obviously, he was having an affair, and then he was trying to cover it up. So like, I feel like that one was like the heaviest motive out
Yeah,
of all of it. But
yeah.
like, even then, the
Even then,
reveal's
that
pretty
does feel
early.
like pretty severe.
Yeah, no, exactly.
Like
And
you would need more you would need more to add on to that to make it feel like justified in the end. Uh,
yeah, and
yeah,
realistic.
I guess so. One thing so I guess here's the thing, right? That's not the direction they chose, and instead they chose to pin it on to Anna de Armas's character Marta, and then you kind of for a while are trying to. I guess the thing that keeps me interested or kept me like plugging away is that she is a very charismatic character. Like acting wise, I think she did amazing in this movie. Yes, maybe I had some bias
Oh
going in
yes.
because I'm just like in love with her. She's just amazing. Uh, but even then, like the emotional stuff, she nails. Right, she's
Oh
just
yeah.
super sweet, super
I
charismatic,
think
and she's just as you see in the movie, and as the detective says multiple times, like she's got a good heart. She's a good person. So that's what keeps you strung along. Is that like you want her to succeed? You don't want her to get caught.
oh
So that's what
100%.
keeps
Like
you for the middle third, and then in the last third, it's kind of like okay, there's someone else, in play here. But
no, I 100% agree with you. Like her character, she just felt like the most authentic out of all of them because obviously, I don't know, maybe rich people are just like that and like over the top and just
yeah,
wild like caricatures. But like
she's more
I don't know, I
relatable, right?
oh yeah, she's definitely the most relatable and like you're rooting for her, right? Like from the very get-go. So
Yeah.
like
You
looking
even get
back
some
on it,
scenes of like her home life. You get like it's brief, right? But you still at
yeah,
least get to meet her mom and her sister, and
and
they seem like good people as well, right?
exactly, and like what she's working for. Like this is more than just her and like getting away with it or like her I don't know, possibly getting in the will to get money. Like she's actually has like
Mm-hmm.
stakes in the game that's
Yeah.
not just like for I don't know, selfish gain,
Yeah.
selfish means.
Exactly.
But yeah, so like looking back, I actually think it was really cool that I don't know, like the whole murder mystery aspect was revolved around her, especially like early on. The viewer thinks that it was actually her,
Mm-hmm.
the one that did it, and so yeah, like looking back on it, I actually think I appreciate it
Yeah.
more.
And that
And
scene too of when she like realizes that I
oh
guess she
fuck
didn't
that, yeah,
actually give him the wrong antidote, but when she thinks she does, and she's just like
yeah.
freaking out, going through her bags and just like breaking
Uh,
down, and then even
the
like
acting wise
yeah,
was
even
phenomenal.
right after that when she walks back in the room briefly, and then he slits his throat, and then she goes out and just cries on the steps, like
Yeah, yeah.
it's intense, man. Like it hits you hard.
Oh yeah, and like that wasn't like the first time, or yeah, I don't think that was the only time in the film that she had like a very emotional scene that she had to
Mm-hmm.
do, and I like I totally bought it. Like there's certain times that people are crying in a film, and I'm like, wow, okay, like you don't even look sad, but like her, like man, I was like getting emotional just watching
Yeah,
her get emotional. It's like man, you feel like for her in that situation, especially like the fact that she has all these things that could just come crumbling down in her
yeah.
world, right? Like if she gets basically charged for murder. Like her mom is an immigrant, she would get sent back, and all these things. Like there's
Mm-hmm.
just so much riding on it.
Yeah.
And
In
yeah,
terms of, now let me ask you this. So you mentioned Daniel Craig's accent. Now, her
yeah.
accent, I believe she is Cuban. Like, is that her actual accent, or was she using an accent in this movie, and then like Blade Runner, she was using like essentially like an American accent? Like, what do you think is the case? Because I haven't seen any interviews with her, so I don't actually know what her actual
That
accent is.
yeah, I'm the wrong person to ask.
Her
Just
accent
like
sounded great in this movie, so I'm inclined to think that
yeah,
maybe that is her actual.
going by her name, how it
Right.
like it just doesn't seem very like American. I would say that
Yeah, I
that
believe
is her
she is.
natural
I'm
accent,
gonna click
but
on her IMDb page. I believe she is. She was born in Cuba. Yeah, so
okay, yeah.
there you go. I mean, that's probably what her voice actually sounds like, I guess. Yeah, that's cool.
Yeah, no, and yeah, she was great.
So good
You
casting on that part, I guess.
oh totally. You mentioned Daniel Craig. We could probably talk about him a little bit since he was another big player in this film.
Yeah, yeah. What?
Like I said before.
Go ahead. Go ahead.
Just like I said before, like his accent right from the beginning, I'm like, man, this could be a long movie. I don't know, like it's not even like it was terrible. It was just like
I
it was
sometimes felt
so
like it
not
was
what I was expecting.
inconsistent. Like some
Yeah,
lines,
he was
I
doing
don't
like the
know. It
drawl,
didn't. Oh yeah.
long drawl, like
Right.
it's
Yeah.
just
Yeah. Sometimes he is very much like playing it up too. Like I don't know. I don't know if it fully
yeah,
worked for me all the time. He still is like a fun character because he is over the top, which I feel like a lot of those detective characters in these movies kind of are. But I thought it was interesting. But he was definitely in it maybe less than I was expecting. I mean, he's still in it quite a
yeah.
bit, but I think it is once again just that Anna de Armas is like by far has the most screen time, and that just
Oh,
kind of
totally.
throws everything that you were expecting kind of out
Oh,
of its place a
100%.
bit, right?
If you want to go back to the trailer too, like I was expecting this whole film to basically just be like behind his shoulder. Like you're following Daniel Craig trying to piece
Mm-hmm.
this together and you only know what he knows, right?
Yeah.
Like and obviously that that's not exactly what happened. And just on that same note, another thing that I guess you could put it as a con for me. It's probably just a little nitpick, but like when right, I think very early in the film when they're actually just doing like the interviews with like the two police. I think one's a detective, one's like a trooper,
Mm-hmm.
and then obviously you have the private investigator Daniel Craig like in the
Yep.
back. In that scene, like you're hearing like their accounts, and then it'll actually do like a flashback of to like what like we could take Walt for example, like when he's talking to his
Yeah.
dad about getting fired, and like I was expecting those scenes to actually be like the story that they're telling, not like this is actually what happened. So us as the viewer only knows what the detective knows. Like
Oh,
I don't know.
okay.
I was kind of hoping for something like that, not like because obviously
Yeah.
in the flashback Walt is explaining or like you see what actually happened, and then he lies straight up to the
Mm-hmm.
detective,
I
and
will
like
say one thing that uh, I think they did really well in that scene is the way they transition between the characters, right? Because you'll have something where like the detective
oh I
asks a
agree, yeah.
question to someone he was just talking to, but then it's like switches over to Walt or something.
Yeah.
And so
No, yeah.
I thought the editing of that sequence was really good at the very least. But I do agree with you that that can be a good way to go about it too, right? Where the viewer and the detective have the same
Yeah.
information.
And like I might have just like seen that before in like another like whether it be like a TV show on a murder mystery or like a I don't know a movie or something like
Mm-hmm.
I feel like I've seen that before, and I thought it was cool how like the flashbacks are the story that the person's telling, not necessarily the truth. And I don't know, obviously it's a nitpick thing. Rian Johnson did his own thing and
Mm-hmm.
it worked out. The movie was great. But like I don't know. I think that's just something I was kind of hoping for, and I didn't get
Yeah,
that. But
that's
I
fair.
totally agree with you. Like the editing in that scene, I thought it was so cool. How like he would ask a question about like ransom,
Mm-hmm.
right? Chris Evans' character,
Yep.
and then it'd be like, oh yeah, he's always been the black sheep of the family, all these things, and then it goes to like Linda, Jamie Lee Curtis's husband, Richard, and he's like, he's an asshole. Like like just like the transition is so funny, and you just feel
Yeah.
like totally like
They all have like
polar opposite
different like
explanations. Yeah.
strategies going in, or like they don't expect that he's like looking into them or something, and they're just like,
Yeah, yeah,
and I
exactly.
think maybe that is like something that plays into a little bit of the cheese as well, where they're just like they are just themselves fully in those moments, and don't really feel
Hmm.
like they're different than maybe they should be acting a bit different or something, but maybe at the same time they're just trying to be genuine, right? To not have any suspicions or something. But I did think that was fun as well, where you would I don't know, they really like messed with your expectations in that scene, but it made for like a
Yeah,
really quick flowing sequence where that could take a really long time to get through when you just kind of have to sit
yeah,
through a few different characters, right? Like it's just highlighting what's the important part for each character.
yeah. No, totally. I totally agree with what you just said, and like also like in that scene, in this point of the movie, like we don't know what happened. So like I feel like I don't know, I might just be speaking for myself here, but like I'm kind of looking for like little character flaws, like, oh, did he twitch, like is this guy lying? So
Oh
like
yeah,
I don't, like
little
as the
tells,
viewer,
right?
I'm basically, yeah, exactly, I'm trying to figure out like who did it in
Mm-hmm.
this moment. I'm not expecting to find out in the next 10 minutes or however long it took for us to
Yeah,
get that reveal.
definitely.
but um but yeah, overall I really liked that scene and just that room, like in general. I loved it. It had like the, I don't know what you'd call it, just like the art of the knives.
The
There,
the
there's
the
a
throne of knives.
yeah, yeah, exactly.
It
It
was
was very
pretty
like
a
Iron
very
Throne, like
cool
Game of
set
Thrones.
piece for sure. Yeah,
Yeah, and
definitely
then like
Game of Thrones, Ash.
right at the very end of the
Yeah.
movie too, Chris Evans' character is like sitting in that chair, and all the knives are just pointing to him. I just thought that was
Yeah.
a really cool shot, and
Uh-huh.
I thought that was really neat.
Yeah, they definitely did a great job with the cinematography of like that room in particular, which gets a lot of
Yeah,
screen time. Uh,
yeah, they were in there a lot.
mm-hmm. As far as like Daniel Craig as Benoit Blanc, I think is how you pronounce his name. I don't think I have too much more to say. Like the accent is a little bit weird, but he still is that like fun kind of kooky detective character. A lot of his screen time, as we mentioned, is kind of alongside Marta, and I think they had a good chemistry together. And there's kind of this weird balance of relationship where it's like clearly he's bringing her along because he wants more information from her, but like it doesn't really make sense for a detective to bring someone along like that to do stuff and like actually give them responsibility. So it was kind of this weird thing, but obviously his intention, you could kind of tell, was like, hey, I know she has more information than she's leading on, and or
Yeah,
she can like act as like a bit of a commentary since she has like more like outside information than any individual person might have. So it's kind of this weird thing, but I think the chemistry between them was good, even though they really only have a couple scenes where they are sitting down like talking to each other about
yeah.
like more meaningful, heartfelt things, I guess.
Yeah, no,
Mm-hmm.
I agree. I thought their chemistry was pretty good. But that was another thing I wanted to ask you about actually, was like the whole I guess you could just call it like a mechanic that they used in this movie where Marta could not lie, right? Or she would vomit. Like how did you
Yeah,
feel about that whole thing? I thought
yeah,
that was kind of cheesy at parts. And
definitely.
like
I
the
have
way
a little section here in my notes just on like let's talk about the cheese, and that was my first thing on there was
yeah.
her puking whenever she lies. It's kind of like this a little more grotesque version of Pinocchio. It is weird, and
Yeah.
when it was first revealed, I was like, okay, I don't like this at all. Like
Yeah,
this is
no, me
way too
neither.
cheesy. But I became okay with it a little bit later because you see a couple scenes where, I mean, the first one is nice because it's actually like some advice from Harlan where can. She can like frame it differently in her head, right? Where she's like, okay, I'm just gonna use like he's like, okay, just like tell a little bit of the truth, or like think about just
Yeah.
one aspect of the truth. And then we see even later where she lies, and then like a few seconds later like pukes into like her soda can or whatever it is. So I think at first it was like a bit cheesy the way they played it off, where it's like it's just like an instant reaction. But then I think they conceptualized it a bit better, where yeah, she gets a little sick to her stomach, but she can still hold it in. So it's not like
Right.
it's not like that's a true lie detector test. It was
Yeah.
just used as like a little bit of a gimmick, and it was very cheesy. So yeah, at first I didn't like it, but then I became okay with it. And then even at the very end, I think it is gets a little bit more cheesy again, right? Where the big reveal happens with Ransom, and then she pukes in his face. It
Yeah.
was kind of funny, I'll agree, but I did think it was, I don't know, maybe once
Well, like
again going a bit too cheesy.
yeah, and like definitely like like right at the beginning, I'm like, oh, that's disgusting. And then I feel like I just found it funnier how there's like they had the camera on Chris Evans for so long, and you see like this puke like dripping off his face, and
Yeah, and
it was
it was like
disgusting, but for
red
whatever reason,
and
yeah, it was
orange.
making me
Yeah.
laugh. It was hilarious. But overall, I don't know. Like I felt like if they used her like puking more like in the film, I wouldn't have liked it. But like after the first few times that they use it, it's definitely seems like it doesn't happen too often. So it's
hmm
kind of
Yeah,
it doesn't
it only
overwhelm
comes
you.
up maybe 3 or 4 times. Or there's like a moment where maybe she lies a bit or something, and you'll hear like a groan in her stomach, but then it won't lead to anything. So yeah, overall,
Yeah,
I think they made it work. But I think that was something as well that you maybe would have been better if you wrote around it actually and came up with like other solutions
yeah,
of how Ransom would kind of unload his confession, or how what was the
yeah.
information again that like first made her puke, that they like what was that information? Was it about what's his name, Richard cheating? Was that the first like piece of info they got from her? I'm trying to think back.
Oh yeah. Like are you talking about like the first time that he sits down with her?
Yeah, is that the question
Yeah,
that prompts that?
he asked
Yeah,
her
so
he asked
something
her
like
if
that.
Richard's having an affair, and she's
Right.
like no, and then she
Yeah,
pukes or
like
whatever.
that information could have been earned in like many different ways. So like you didn't have to go with that. So I think it would have honestly not taken too much to like write around that and come up with another solution. But
Yeah.
as it stands, that's what Rian Johnson wanted to do. So Rian Johnson did it. You know.
That's very true.
Since
And
we're
like,
yeah, okay, go ahead. Go
sorry,
ahead.
I just want like one last thing on like the whole
Yeah.
puking stuff. But like just from like the beginning, or not the beginning, but like when he sits down with Marta,
Mm-hmm.
has that conversation, and then obviously she pukes the first time, and then he just like keeps asking her questions, and I'm like, I don't know, I just had like this salty taste in my mouth where I'm like, okay, well this is just gonna be like anytime he wants to like confirm his suspicions, he's just
Yeah.
gonna ask her, and I'm like, this just seems like a little bit lazy.
Right,
Like
because
I feel like
it
it could
is
have been
because
written a little
it's
bit better.
lazy. It's lazy writing, lazy writing. It's lazy writing, but also it also takes away from what makes the detective good, right? Because he's not really figuring
Yeah,
stuff out anymore. He just has like this trump card essentially that he can pull
yeah,
whenever
exactly.
Marta's around or has that information.
Yeah, and like that's
Mm-hmm.
why I felt like he was kind of like obviously she was talking to Harlan and like Harlan trusts her, so they had a good relationship. So obviously she's a good resource to like use for questions on that stuff, but also she just can't lie. So
Mm-hmm.
like
Yeah.
like it's just a win-win having her with him.
Yeah.
And I don't know. I felt like that could have been handled better personally, but
Yeah.
like you said, Ryan Johnson does what he
Since
wants.
since we're on the yeah, since we're on the topic of cheese, let's talk about a couple other like cheesy moments. So I think and maybe this one's not cheesy, but the fact that the you know the murderee, the deceased, whatever you want to call him in this movie, is himself a murder mystery writer. How did you what did you think about that? Because that's kind of cheesy as well, isn't it?
Yeah, that's funny. I honestly didn't like it didn't stick with me too much. Like I I don't know, maybe like just missed the whole idea that he would be like a murder mystery writer. Like I knew he wrote those types of things, but for some reason it just didn't hit me as
Yeah,
hard.
it's
So
it's not like a topic that comes up, but it's certainly a couple times where I think this actually leads into another thing where there's a cop. One of the cops is like a fan of his writing, right? So like
super
as he's
nerdy over
talking to
him,
the
yeah.
family, he's like nerding out about stuff, and he's definitely over the top, and that's like not what a cop would do in that scenario. You know, he'd hold back on that
Yeah.
stuff. So that was maybe another cheesy thing. I thought both of those were fine. Like they weren't like over the top by any means, but definitely there's definitely a few instances of cheese here or there.
No, I agree. Like yeah, because I felt like they had that state trooper guy, right? Like he was the one that was just geeking out over all
Mm-hmm.
that stuff.
Yep.
Like maybe they just had him to like I don't know, give some backstory. Yeah, like I don't know, just give more backstory on like what this character was writing about and
That's
just
a good point,
the world
actually.
that he was
Yeah, because
telling. But like,
I guess it gives the perspective of a fan because obviously his family are supportive of his work, but aren't really going to talk about it from that perspective. So
yeah,
that's a good
and
point.
like I definitely think that he was overused a bit and got a little cheesy. But
Yeah,
there's definitely
I can
some
agree. Yeah.
like just around the house and stuff how he had like props like from his books like he had like the animals in the woods and then
Mm-hmm.
like obviously they had the trooper being like oh these are those animals from this book and
Yeah,
like
yeah,
blah
yeah.
blah blah and then like in the house like the hidden window and
Right.
he's explaining like
Yeah.
oh the hidden window like I kind of like that because it I don't know it just I feel like it fleshes the world out a little bit on like I don't know
Yeah,
like
I mean it makes
it's
sense. A lot of writers, that's a classic thing, right? You obviously pull from what you know, and it's interesting that he had enough resources to kind of like build that world around himself, or who knows if like he built that window after a book he wrote, or if he had that window and decided to turn it into a story or something. It's kind of
yeah
like this.
yeah no totally
It's
and
like that house is just full of lore.
yeah, exactly. That was the word I was trying to find. And like you mentioning that he was like a murder mystery writer, it actually I don't know, I kind of like the fact that he was because it makes like his whole plan for like Marta to get away, like
Yeah.
it doesn't seem out of character, right? Like
Right, the
of
fact
all
that he could
people,
just
he would
do it
be the
in 10
one.
minutes, he could come up with this
Yeah,
elaborate
exactly.
plan.
Like
Yeah. And think
maybe he
about
was
like
already
little
writing a book about
details.
that or something, right? Like you
Yeah.
never
Yeah, and then he's like capable to think of those details or think from the perspective of
hmm
a cop or something. Like when he says to turn off before the statue instead of after the statue because he knows it's on tape. Even though she messes that up, I think that
Yeah.
was like a nice moment there, right?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So looking back on it, I think I kind of like the fact that he was a murder mystery
Yeah,
writer, and I
I
I
think it was fun. Yeah.
definitely yeah I definitely think though like there'll probably be a big group that thinks that's over the
Right.
top cheesy, but
The one
I don't
thing
know.
here's another thing, another cheesy thing that I didn't like is at one point Marta, she's kind of getting blackmailed, so she ends up going to this place, goes in to talk with it's like the housekeeper or the chef. I can't remember what exactly.
Fran, yeah, I
Yeah,
took her
Fran.
as well. Like they called her the help, so yeah, like a maid, right?
Yeah, so a housekeeper of some sort as well. Uh, so she is like on the floor like dying, and Marta is trying to save her, and then she's saying you did this, like to try and like throw blame, but then it's revealed later that she's saying that Hugh did this, the
You.
name Hugh, because that's Ransom's first name, a detail that I don't think we as viewers knew. To me that was a bit much. That was a little
Yeah.
over the cheesy line that I was okay with, and I didn't like that. Maybe I'd be, maybe if I rewatch it and I realize that they say his first name earlier in the movie and that's a detail you could pick up on, maybe I'd like it more.
Yeah.
But I'm pretty sure that's the first time you're given or you're even told that Ransom's not his first name.
No,
Or at
no,
least
no, no,
that's the
no.
first time you're told that that is his actual name. I don't know.
Well, well, here you go. So when he gets to the house for like the will reading, he's
Hmm.
walking in. The detectives are like Hugh, and blah blah blah, and then he's like, "Don't call me that." He's like, "Only the help
Oh,
calls me
okay.
Hugh."
So
So that
yeah,
might have just been a detail you missed.
yeah, did you, so when she revealed that, did you had thought back to that moment? You remembered that?
Sh Well, like I think it's even Marta that says only Hugh, or sorry, only the help calls Hugh by his first
Hmm.
name or something
Oh,
like she
okay.
says that like when the big reveal happens. So like looking back on it, I'm like, okay, yeah, like
I
it
guess
was
that,
okay, but
yeah.
like still in that moment, I feel like she would have said Ransom did this, like because I don't know, like I never even really took her as a maid type character. Like I don't know, maybe I'm just
Yeah, I
stereotyping
mean,
what a maid would
she
look
did
like,
seem
but she just seemed
closer.
like a
Yeah,
friend or something, right? I don't
that's
know.
true. But yeah, so I guess you're right. That's something that I didn't pick up on. It does still feel a bit cheesy, but yeah, I think that is maybe. I guess that is the detail that I missed. But
Yeah, like I agree with you that like it is pretty cheesy, and I don't know because I feel like you never really hear Fran call him Hugh like at any point in the film, and like
yeah,
maybe
she's
if
not in
she
it a
did
whole
that a
lot.
few times, like maybe if I don't know, even if you just heard her say like oh Hugh like out like just in like talking or whatever, and then in that moment like it would give the viewer a chance to be like oh maybe she's talking about
Yeah,
Hugh not you or something
yeah,
like I don't
yeah,
know like I felt like it was a decision that Rian Johnson like made afterwards. He's like, oh, we should change his name to Hugh, and
yeah.
just
Like
it'd be really
I
unique.
don't think I would mount that as a con against the movie. It's just like a little detail
Yeah,
that I thought was a bit weird. But yeah, maybe a
yeah,
rewatch will change my thoughts on that or
yeah.
something.
I agree.
Do you have any other? Is there any other cheesy things you wanted to call it? That was kind of my list of cheesy things.
Um, let's think. Other, I don't know. I guess I could ask you about like the use of just like the whole like modern day like humor that they're tackling. Like they made like a couple like social justice warrior jokes and like
Right.
the fact that what was the it character's name? Jacob?
His
Like Walt's
name
son?
in the movie is Jacob. Yeah, Jacob Thrum.
Yeah, so like the whole like humor around him, I felt like it, I don't know.
The
I
alt
feel like
right
some
troll. Yeah.
people, yeah, exactly. Like it's funny because it's pretty relevant like nowadays. But like for me, I feel like that humor kind of worked the least amount out of. I don't know.
Yeah. I
It
would
might
say
just be personal,
I
right?
would say I didn't find it like funny per se, but it didn't like bother
Yeah.
me. To me, it was just like, okay, this is the kind of character he is. Like that was just it was kind of through the mouthpiece of Meg, who was kind of talking shit to him and stuff. But I
Yeah.
mean, he's not in it a whole lot. But yeah, I don't know that it didn't like bother me. I guess it didn't come off to me like it was supposed to be big like haha jokes or something. I thought I guess
Yeah.
I took it more as just like they're just kind of telling you what kind of character they are or something.
Yeah, and
So
like they kept just referring him to a Nazi or something, and I don't know. I feel like me personally, I just don't find that funny or like
yeah,
like I don't know
that's totally fair. That was
yeah.
definitely like Ryan Johnson trying to be a millennial or something. Like it
Yeah,
comes across
that's
the
totally what
kind
it felt like. Yeah,
like I guess to
exactly.
me it felt it felt like it didn't feel like it stood out. I guess so. I guess it
Yeah.
worked for me in that like he set out to that was the kind of thing he was trying to achieve that, and to me he hit it. Although it wasn't like a home run, I guess is the way I
Yeah.
describe it.
Yeah, I would have to agree because
Hmm.
obviously it didn't work totally with me,
Yeah,
but I'm sure that like there's people in my theater laughing, and like I'm sure like
yeah.
some people are
There's
love
definitely
that
is a
stuff.
few like big laugh moments, and then some that are kind of maybe are more funny to individual people or not. Like once
Mm-hmm.
again, like even seeing that scene where Ransom's just like eat shit, eat shit, eat shit. Like
Yeah.
obviously we've seen that in the trailers like at least 10 times. Who knows how many times? I still thought that was hilarious in the movie, and like so did most of the theater. Even after that scene was over, I was laughing for like another minute straight,
Yeah.
trying to hold myself together. But just seeing Chris Evans, seeing Captain America, just shit
Telling
talk
everyone to
all
eat
these
shit.
people
Yeah.
was so good. I just loved it.
Yeah. Yeah, I definitely liked that scene. I feel like I liked it more for like the people's reaction to
Yeah,
like him
definitely.
saying that because he was just like all like cool and calm, but
They
like
were all
everyone
like,
was just
"Cap,
getting
what are you
so
doing?"
riled up like every time he'd say like yeah. So I really enjoyed that scene.
uh,
Just thinking back to another
yeah.
cheesy moment, like honestly, this scene just made me laugh so hard, and I feel like a lot of people might think it was just out of context or like might have been random and cheesy, but like when Michael Shannon he's with Meg, and I think he's talking to Marta or something like, "Don't worry, like we're gonna be taking care of you."
Mm-hmm.
I think this is like after the funeral, and then he just like stops talking, turns to Meg. He's just like, "You smoking grass or something?" I don't
Yeah.
like. I was just so funny, and I feel like if any other character did like said that, I wouldn't have laughed as hard. But just the fact that it was Michael Shannon,
Right.
it was just
Just like
made me laugh so
this
hard.
like grumpy old uncle character. Yeah, it fit
Yeah, and
perfectly.
like you know that film yeah, it's with Seth Rogen, Joseph Gordon-Levitt, and Falcon. Actually, I forget the actor's name,
Falcon.
but
Oh,
it's
yeah,
like
the night
the
before.
Chris. Yeah, the night before. He's
Yeah.
like a drug dealer in that film, and
Yes.
he
Oh,
just
yes. I
totally
forgot about
reminded me
that.
of like that character in this movie, and I just like every time he was on scene, I just loved it. That was another one of like my favorite just roles that
Yeah,
they had in this film.
he's a great actor. It was fun to see him in this kind of role because he was kind of comedic and just kind of like a weird dude, right? He was a
I
very
know,
weird dude.
totally. And he's like talking about like his publishing company and like saying that like it's basically just his and like his ideas. Then everyone's talking like, "What are you talking about?" Like
Mm-hmm.
like he was not he didn't earn that. Like he was just given that and all that. Like I just love like I don't know like the different views that they had towards him and him
Yeah.
having I don't know on himself.
Yeah, everyone seemed to
So
be against him somewhat, and then even like his son as well. People were just shitting on his sons. It's kind of just
yeah, yeah,
all
totally.
around not good for him. Uh, let's jump back into the plot for a bit, and let's talk about the whole. Well, so we kind of talked about the first third, then we talked about the second third. Let's talk about that last third of the movie. This is kind of the part where Chris Evans takes a bigger role in the movie as Ransom, and it's kind of eventually you get led on that Ransom is kind of the one who is behind. He's kind of the actual suspect all along, right? He's the one who did
Yeah.
it, you could say, at the very end of the day. What did you think about that as a reveal, right? Because obviously he's not in the movie a ton early on. He's a little bit mysterious. And then he's kind of just like a shithead in the middle of the movie, and then he's kind of like the integral player in the last end, where he's kind of teaming up with Marta. But then
Hmm.
you realize that even though he seems very genuine, it was for some gain. And then obviously a lot of the clues that you'd begin earlier in the movie all kind of come together in that last bit. So how did you feel about Ransom being the one at the end of the day?
Yeah, uh, it's I want to say like it was like kind of the obvious choice out of everyone there because I felt like he had the most hatred towards Harlan and even from like when he storms out of the party, like if you had that one scene and then you had to guess who's the one that
Mm-hmm.
murdered him, right? Like you'd just be like, oh, probably
Yeah,
that guy. 'Cause
I guess the switch up
he had those
there.
rage towards him.
Yeah, I guess the switch up there is that what does he have to gain, right? Because
Yeah,
they say that he was written out of the will, whereas everyone else is still well, they what they think is part of the will. It turns out none of them are, but I guess that's
yeah.
the thing that like maybe he seems kind of guilty, but then that plot point comes out, and then you're thinking, okay, well, it can't be him. Why would he do it, right?
Oh, totally. And then like I was definitely having those thoughts like during the film and when they're I don't even know where they are. Like him and Marta are at like a diner and then she's kind of telling the whole story and he's just sitting there and like kind of like giving her some advice and it's revealed at the end that that was the moment that he was kind of like holy shit I kind of fucked up my plan here. So it was funny though because like the acting that he had there it was just so like I bought it like I felt like he was generally like oh okay yeah I think this is what we're gonna do we're gonna help you out and then
Yeah.
like we're gonna screw over my family because I just hate them and then I'll take my cut and then we'll go our separate ways and that'll be the end of it. Like I kind of bought that, and maybe that's just because he's been Captain America for so long. I've
Yeah.
just grown to trust him, and just I have that feeling in my heart for him. But
No matter what, he's doing good for the country, kind of thing.
exactly. But so yeah, overall, I thought it was. It's weird because I kind of want to just say like that was the safe choice to end with. You know, like out of everyone
Right.
that would have been behind it, I probably would have put my money on him being the one. But I don't know
It
because
kind of would have had to been him. It would have had to been Walt, or it would have had to been Richard. I guess yeah,
right,
Richard was his name.
yeah,
Like, maybe Joni, like Tony Collette's character, but I didn't really feel like it was ever veering that way. But at the same time, I don't know. I guess I kind of fell for Chris Evans' charm a bit. Like I wasn't
yeah,
immediately sus of him, and I think one, it's just like a really fun performance because he is obviously he's like just being kind of an asshole, just very overconfident, very charming. But I also feel like he kind of had like this flamboyant edge to him as well, where like obviously when he's doing the eat shit scene, like the way he's kind of hiding behind his hand as he points to people, or
yeah,
when they're in the diner and he's just like chewing on that like coffee stirring thing. Like it's just
yeah.
it's a really fun character, and I feel like he was really chewing up the scenery, so to speak. And I guess that like maybe he was just so charming that it worked on me. Like he baffled me a bit, where I was like, oh, he's just
Well,
too good of a guy, and maybe that's like turning on itself because that's like an obvious red herring thing. But I think I was more thinking of it from like the perspective of, well, what does he have to gain from doing it? And I think I couldn't see the motive at the time. Um,
well, yeah,
yeah.
and like that's exactly what I was kind of leaning on too. It's just like, well, I feel like it should be him, but I'm falling for his charm. Like, there's no way he's
Mm-hmm.
capable of this. Like, come on, look at him. Like,
Yeah.
but obviously that was just me. I don't know, falling victim to his charm, and maybe they did that intentionally, and maybe that's why they
Yeah.
chose Chris Evans because he's just been that Boy Scout for so long to be in this role. But who knows?
Yeah.
Worked on me because I don't know. Like I honestly, from the moment that they show like the vial switched and Marta's the one that
Yeah.
or like from that point on, we think that she's the one that did it. Like
Mm-hmm.
I just ate that up. Like I was like, okay, like this that's actually what happened. So the twist at the end, I thought that was actually really cool and unique. And obviously, I'm a sucker for those big holy shit moments. And
Yeah,
this
definitely.
one wasn't like too crazy, but it was still like,
Yeah,
wow, I
I mean
wasn't really
they
expecting
do
that.
it's a classic whodunit where the detective just kind of unloads all his information. And I think that in terms of that, I thought it was pretty successful, right? Where it calls back to some details, like the dogs barking. It's like you could have picked up on that because when he got out of his car originally, the dogs were barking at him,
Hmm.
and that's something that they kind of mentioned earlier. Or Chris Evans at one point he mentions that he kind of worked with Harlan for a summer or something, and knew about his medication. So there's definitely
Yeah.
like those details that you can kind of piece together, and so from that sense of like putting the puzzle together, it all works. So it was effective still, but I think maybe you're right where it didn't feel like there was too many people that it could have been at that point in time because most of the family kind of falls off the map a bit. Like Jamie Lee Curtis in particular, I feel like she doesn't really have a ton of screen time, and it's at no point
No.
really
Mm.
given any motivation for her. Like I get she's kind of like the biggest actress out of the bunch here, I would say. So maybe she that was kind of the reason she's in it the least or something. But yeah.
Yeah, and like maybe I'll have to put that as another con for the film is that like I did like there wasn't really a point where I thought, okay, it could be anyone. Like anyone
Mm-hmm.
could be the person that's behind this. Like
It's true. Yeah.
cuz even like the scenes that weren't necessarily like the detective's point of view or like explore or like interviewing someone like we actually got a scene of Jamie Lee Curtis like reading like the notes and just like like crying basically like getting all emotional thinking
Yeah.
about her dad and it's just like well this just seems authentic like there's
Yeah.
no way that she's actually the one that kill her, right? And then she keeps going on about like the secrets that she had like with her dad and like the games that they would play.
uh-huh.
And like that just felt really like authentic and real. And like if it came down to it that she was actually the murderer, I would have been like, holy shit, I was not seeing that whatsoever. But that wasn't the case. And it was definitely like what I thought from the beginning, where
Yeah.
there's no way it could have been her. And it's like same thing with basically most of the family. Like I
It's
just
true.
didn't suspect them. And
Mm-hmm.
I felt like maybe that was a shortcoming of the film. Like maybe there should have been more like, oh, it could be this guy, it could be that guy, or like you hear some murmuring of like around the corner of someone talking about like a nefarious thing that'd be like, oh, this guy's so guilty, and then I don't know, just something like that. And I felt like that might have been a
Yeah.
shortcoming of the film.
I at least like from my personal experience, I didn't feel like it was too obvious. So that's really at the end of the day, that's the most important thing. And I guess the other detail that I thought was good was the like the granny, she like sees Ransom out the window, and then
Yeah.
when you see Marta go by the window, she says, "Oh, Ransom, you're back again." And it's like funny because that works as like a good little comedic beat, but then it actually ties back into being one of the puzzle
Yeah.
pieces. So I
Yeah,
thought that was good as
stuff
well.
like that I really like because obviously on your second watch through, you're like, oh, there's actually meaning behind
Yeah, and this is definitely
the
one I
crazy
want to
kook.
rewatch at
Yeah.
some point, in the future, and see what kind of details I could pick up on, or see how it like was all connected well and whatnot.
Yeah. I don't know. I also just love movies that like take you on like through the perspective of like different people.
Mm-hmm.
Like just like quick example, like when Joni's like doing yoga or something and then she hears like the kerthunk like above her
Yeah.
and then she goes upstairs and then like she says that she saw like the go board like on the ground.
Mm-hmm.
And then it's like, okay, that's what happened. And then obviously you get Marta's perspective and it's like she actually fell. It wasn't the go board. So I love when like stuff like that gets explained from
Yeah.
another person's point of view and then you hear a different point of view
Right,
and
and
it's
then
just
even
totally different.
you see Benoit Blanc like flip the table over and see that it makes no noise as
Yeah.
well. So it kind
Yeah.
of like you already kind of have that suspicion at that point, and then it's
Yeah. No, totally.
so they
So
kind of
I
tackle all the clues or most of the clues from like
yeah.
multiple angles, or they bring it up once or twice again. So kind of strings
Yeah.
it
And
all together nicely, right?
oh, totally. And like me saying that I love that stuff. I think I was like expecting and wanting more in this film of stuff like that. Like I felt like
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I don't know, there's just because there's so many characters and it's such a big house. Like
Yeah.
there could have been so many
I
opportunities
guess
for
that's
that
just
stuff
the
to happen, right?
nature of having like the reveal, or I guess it is kind of somewhat of a fake reveal, having that so early on, because then it changes that middle of the movie where like the first third and the last third are very much going through all the evidence, but that middle section you're kind of lacking that, and I guess
Oh,
that's I
totally.
guess that's
And
kind of the salute, like that's the result, I should say, what ends up happening.
oh, totally. And like me saying it's a shortcoming of the film, maybe that's just me having my expectations of like getting used to that formula that the reveal doesn't happen
Yeah.
early on, and
Well,
I
the
just got
classic
to get used to
formula,
this
there's nothing
new.
wrong with it. Like
Hmm.
even if we've seen it
Yeah.
like however many times, it still is fun, right? That's why you have however many crime shows where that's like every single episode is a small plot like
Yeah.
that for like 7 or 8 seasons, right? Like it is fun to do that as a viewer. So,
Yeah. No, totally.
hmm
Oh, for sure.
I think I'm cutting into my kind of miscellaneous notes. Did you have any other like big plot like things to talk about? Because that was really kind of all
Um,
I had to say, I guess.
Not really. Something I found like kind of fun like while I was watching it.
Mm-hmm.
Like they set certain things up. Like like just one quick example is when Marta sees Harlan like slit his throat, and then it like zooms in on her shoe, and there's like a blood splatter on there, and you're like,
Yeah.
okay, well, this is gonna get brought up at one point in the film, and like it didn't do it for like I swear 90% of the movie until the very end, and I was
Yeah,
like, wow,
definitely.
I can't believe they just forgot that detail. Like they put so much emphasis on it, and then he kind of brought it back up. So any moment that they were um, like
Yeah. I think
like
that I feel like that was pretty well, if you look at like the purpose of that, like it wasn't ever to do a reveal. It was more like because the viewer, it's like only the viewer sees that droplet of blood, right?
yeah,
Then it pulls back and shows that the detective knew about that the whole time, right? So
yeah,
that's where I think it's interesting because it adds to that character and makes you a certain him. I mean, you already kind of in the big final reveal. That's where you kind of get all you need to know that he is a great detective. But up to that point, like he is almost stumbling his way through, or obviously he's working
oh, yeah,
with the person who quote unquote did it the whole time. So I think it's a detail like
yeah.
that that kind of comes back and reinforces it. Like yes, he is paying attention to little details as well when he sees like the mud on the carpet or like on the little mud mark on the window, right?
Yeah, no,
Mm-hmm.
totally.
Yeah.
Yeah, and like even just from like just going back to Ben. Wait, sorry, what's his last? Like, what was the character's last name?
Benoit
The Daniel
Blanc.
Ben. Yeah, just so French. I found it hilarious that he had like a thick Southern accent too, and he's got this like
He
French
was a
name.
weird
So
character, man. He's very
yeah,
mysterious. I
definitely.
feel like all those kind of characters do, like those over the top detectives. Like you never really know what their backstory is. Like they just whenever you're dropped into the movie, like they were already a great detective.
Oh, totally. And like it was funny though, because for his character, like he had all this like credit, and like people said like, oh, you're famous, I know all about you and everything, but like from
You're
kind of in the
famous.
beginning, he yeah, he kind of just seems like kind of like wacky and like weird, and I don't know, just
Hmm.
like not like you wouldn't expect him to be like the genius he is, but then obviously throughout the film it kind of gets
Right, right.
just from some of the things he's finding out, it's like, oh, okay, this guy actually knows his shit, and
Yeah, and
like you said, when he's seeing the details in the mud and all that stuff.
yeah, and it probably like I imagine on a rewatch it kind of reconceptualizes some things. Like if you think to when Marta, the detectives, and like the I guess ranger dude, whatever he is, like they go to watch like the video footage, and she kind of
Hmm.
pulls a fast one and ejects the movie and kind of plays it off that the movie got like messed up or something. Like maybe he knew about that. Maybe he knew that she had done that, and he just rolled with it to not like blow his relationship with her or something. So that would be
Yeah.
interesting on a rewatch to see like maybe what feels like he's almost like doofus moves. Like I wonder if some of those things were intentional because he was always kind of playing it out. And I mean, I guess you can kind of attribute to him anyway because that's kind of what that character is supposed to be. He's supposed to just be like the super genius that sees it all, you know?
Yeah, no, totally. And like, but it was also kind of interesting because there'd be parts where I'm like, okay, this guy is actually like serious and he knows what he's doing and all these things. And then it would get to like a scene where I just felt like he was putting so much trust into like the Marta character, and like, I don't know, like
Like too
for me,
much, right?
yeah, like too much, and like it felt kind of out of character, like for this guy to just be so suspicious of basically everyone. Like that's kind of his job, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
everyone's a suspect. Even he said at the end, like, I'm never ruling anyone out, like everyone is a suspect.
Yeah.
And but like she's like, oh, I gotta make a quick stop here. He's like, oh yeah, no worries. And then he's just like listening to his tunes and just totally like on another world, like not even like thinking about where
Yeah,
she
it's a
could have
funny
gone or like
scene.
what
Yeah.
she's grabbing. Like it like there's just some inconsistencies, and
Yeah.
like I felt like he was putting too much trust in the Marta character.
Right. And I definitely agree with that as well.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah.
some other miscellaneous notes here. One, there's a couple points at the end that I think, the interesting thing about most of this movie is dealing with a family, and so if you ever need a scene like a more heartfelt scene, they can refer to one another because they're siblings or they're married or something. But Marta, she kind of has her family, but you only see them a couple times. So kind of at the end of the movie,
Mm-hmm.
she's conflicted on what she should do. Should she return like the house or some of the money to the family? Should she just keep it all? And there's some nice like cinematography things that kind of establish this. So one, she's like conflicted. She walks out of a room and she looks up and sees the portrait of Harland, and he's just like got that big beautiful smile on. And
Yeah.
I think it just like reminds her of like, yes, he made this decision and she was so close with him that she should honor that. And then even
Mm-hmm.
how she has that mug that you see earlier in the movie, the mug that says like my house, my rules, my coffee. I
Very
thought that
much
was
stands out, like in
yeah,
like this, like just like the like how like, I don't know, eloquent and like artistic the house is, and it kind of has like the same shape, and there's just like this cup that just seems like you got it at Walmart. Like
one of
I
those
just
like
thought it was kind of funny.
cheesy, yeah,
Yeah.
cheesy kind of cups. And so I thought those two moments at the end there were some great, just some storytelling, just with some nice shots, throwing some details in there. And when she's just up there on the balcony, just drinking out of that cup, and then it obviously kind of zooms in and makes it very obvious. But even then, I noticed kind of earlier on in that sequence that she had that mug, and I just thought it was really creative way to tie the movie up in a nice little bow right at the end there.
Oh, I 100% agree with you. And it's like I don't even think like words were like spoken in like that last scene.
Yeah,
we got
yeah,
that end message without anyone having to say
just a
anything. And
slow simmer for sure.
oh, totally. And like as like if you're, I don't know, if you're a film nerd, like I just feel like you would appreciate that. Like I don't know. I'm not a big like detail oriented guy for when it comes to film, but I just thought that was really cool.
Mm-hmm. A couple other details. One, at some point, Chris Evans mentions. I just keep saying Chris Evans because I'm so used to that.
I
But
know.
Ransom mentions that he knows about Marta's inability to lie because of a Mafia game they played last summer.
Oh
And
yeah.
as I mentioned at the top of the episode, love Mafia, love Avalon. So I thought that was great because I'm sure now that Rian Johnson plays Mafia every once in a while, or he's played it with some friends,
Oh, yeah.
and that's like maybe one of the reasons why he loves murder mysteries or loves the genre, because that's kind of the way you can play it in real life, and so I thought that was a good shout out. Here's a
Yeah.
detail. Sorry, go ahead.
I was just gonna say quickly that I'm glad you wrote that down, because when it went off, I'm like, oh, I gotta remember to say that, and
Yeah.
obviously I didn't. So
When we were sitting down with the credits after the movie, I noticed that uh, one of the there's a cop that was played by Joseph Gordon-Levitt. Did you notice him in the movie?
I actually didn't notice that.
Yeah, me neither. None of us did. I don't know if he was like one of the cops at the very beginning when they're going into the house. Uh, if it was one of the ones later that is like locking up Ransom. I don't know when he was in this movie. He was like the very last credit, I'm pretty sure. But yeah, I guess he was in there. I don't know if he was like a producer on it and he just kind of stopped in to film. Like they needed a quick character on the fly and he did it, or if maybe he's
Yeah.
just friends with Rian Johnson. I guess no, he was in because Looper is a Rian Johnson movie, isn't? And Joseph Gordon-Levitt's in that. So I guess they've worked
Yeah.
together before, or maybe they're friends or something. So that's kind of a fun detail, even though I didn't actually notice when he's
Oh,
in
here
there.
you go. I'm on the IMDb and it says he was a detective, uncredited though.
Uncredited.
But that doesn't
Okay.
make sense because I thought you said that you saw him though in the credits.
He was in the
So wouldn't that make
he was in the credits at the screening I saw. So
Yeah.
yeah,
So there you go. He was in it.
yeah.
That's funny. Yeah, I totally missed that.
That's definitely a detail to on a rewatch pause on your home screen and just like where the fuck was he?
Yeah.
I want to find him. Another thing, just kind of a character we haven't mentioned yet, but an actor I've only seen in Get Out, Lakeith Stanfield, who plays Lieutenant Elliot. He's kind of like
hmm
the one who's conducting interviews at the beginning, and then he's kind of strung throughout. He's kind of like the straight man that plays off of Daniel Craig as the detective, kind of just the straight ahead cop who just looks at things in a very like matter of fact, black and white sort of way. And then obviously Benoit
Mhm.
Blanc is kind of the one who decorates it with a little more detail. And I thought he was great in that role. He kind of had like this certain cadence to the way he was talking that was really fun. And yeah, just another character like in Get Out, he has a very small role. So I was curious to see him again. And once again, it is a smaller role, but I thought he was great as like the leading cop, and he was a fun character to
Yeah.
watch.
Yeah, I think I've only seen him in Get Out, and obviously he's super minor role in this. And even just like when he's doing the interview, I'm just like, man, I'm just expecting this guy to get like a nosebleed or something and just like freeze,
Put on-
and just start like
Put on
wigging
that
out.
special hat and get a nosebleed. Yeah.
Yeah.
And just act really fucking weird. Yeah, not
But
this
yeah,
time
no,
around.
I thought he was great.
Yeah, and with that, I think that kind of expels all my notes. Do you got any other talking points here?
Not really. I just thought it was funny that Tony's character or Tony Collette's character was named Joni. It's spelled like basically
Yeah,
exact same.
one letter
Yeah.
different.
Yeah, I thought that was kind of funny.
Joni,
but,
and her last name, what is her? Yeah, Thromby, I guess. She's a Thromby. So.
yeah, married into it. It's such a funny like origin too. It's like her husband,
I know,
who
right?
I guess
Because
was
even that
was-
origin of like her just kind of hanging on to this family is very much a gold digger for like 15 years. They
Oh,
said, right?
yeah.
Like that totally
Oh,
fits the
yeah.
character perfectly.
And she's,
so.
yeah, and like when she's just explaining like her relationship with the family, it's like, oh, I love them and they love me, and then it shows like her trying to dance with like Jamie Lee Curtis,
Yeah,
and Jamie
that
Lee
was
Curtis just
so
being
funny.
like so like annoyed. Like I just thought that was hilarious.
Yeah, just brushing her off. Yeah, I thought that was great as well.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So yeah, I have no other notes.
All right, let's wrap it up here.
Let's wrap this baby up.
Let's wrap it up. I don't do my scores, but I guess what I'd say in closing, yes, I have some cons. Yes, there is some things that maybe went against my expectations in good or bad ways, but overall I just had so much fun with this movie, and I'm just like, Rian Johnson, I don't have a ton of experience with his movies. Like I've seen Looper, but I saw it many years ago and it didn't really stick with me, and then Last Jedi, I don't know. I kind of have a few problems with that movie. Didn't love it overall.
Mhm.
But I think this is very much like proving that, yeah, he is a good director, right? Between like the shots, I think he's also the writer of this as well. So really
Yeah,
proved
he
to me
wrote
that
it.
he is really solid. And although there is some weird things in Last Jedi, maybe some of that is because he was doing a follow up to a movie that he didn't write. Maybe that was why. Maybe it's not because he made some bad decisions. Although I kind of feel like maybe he made a couple, but at least for the case of Knives Out, I really loved this movie. I had a lot of fun with it, and Anna de Armas was kind of the standout for me as like,
Oh,
she is great, and I loved her after Blade Runner, and I think now I can say that was definitely justified, and I'm just excited to see her in more stuff in the future because
like
she can definitely play that leading role. And I don't want to say carry a
Oh.
movie because I don't think she carries this movie because everyone does great, but she can definitely lead a movie and do it effectively.
Oh, she's definitely a solid lead, and she's definitely gained me as a fan of her. She's just, like her acting in this film like was just so different from the other characters that they had, because I felt like she was the most like, I don't know, like down to earth and like realistic out of everyone. Like they were all just very like caricatures, right?
Yeah,
Like they're just so
definitely.
wild. Joni was this Instagram like socialite. You have KFC, Daniel Craig, and the it's like
Richard
it's
as
just
like the
like,
classic like douchebag like cheating husband.
oh,
Yeah.
totally, yeah, just constantly. He just like getting that impersonation or that
Yeah.
that impression that he's just an ass. I guess we didn't
Hmm.
really talk about him too much, but
Yeah,
I
I
don't
think
know.
for some of these characters, like we didn't really talk much about Catherine Langford as Meg as well. She's very much like the edgy teen who kind of sides with Marta a bit because they, are similar in age group and whatnot. But there is a few
Hmm.
characters that are more simple, and that's why I don't think we
Yeah.
need to deep dive on all of them necessarily. But yeah,
Oh, totally. Just getting back to Anna de Armas. Is that how you say her name?
Anna de Armas, yeah.
Yeah, she was just phenomenal, and she was, yeah. I liked her.
Hmm. So
She's
Kirkland, what are you
sorry.
gonna rate? Are you gonna give this movie a rating out of 10? If so, what are you gonna rate
Yeah,
it?
I I usually do ratings, so I might as well give it a rating. It's funny though, because I'm not gonna say I'm quite like Taylor with my ratings, but when I give ratings, it's usually like a rating to the genre. Like sometimes
Oh,
I'll
okay,
give
yeah,
a
yeah.
movie like a higher rating than like a drama type movie. Like if it's just I enjoyed it more, not necessarily there was a better film, but for me personally, I liked it more
I
for
see what
like
you mean.
that
Yeah,
genre.
I think that's a good way to
Um,
do it for sure.
yeah, so for like a murder mystery film, I think I'm gonna give this 8 out of 10. I
Same.
think I was leaning more of a 7 yesterday, but the more I like sat on it and like thought back to some of the little details, especially some of the stuff that you brought up, I don't know, I really like this film. Like I said, I had some issues with kind of in the early like bits of just like the vibes I was getting, like, oh, this is the way we're going with this movie. Like we know how he died the whole film. Like it's not even really a murder mystery until at the
Hmm.
end, and then it's revealed. It's like, oh wow, okay, that's a cool little take on it, and definitely was not expecting that. The cast was awesome. I basically had fun with everyone. There's definitely some people that I felt like took like a back seat,
Yeah,
but it's kind of tough in a film like
I
this where
feel
you
like
have a
that
lot of big
always kind of
names.
happens in the genre. Like there is some characters that you usually you kind of have to like you're having to introduce like up to 10 characters usually to make it interesting. So there's some dynamic, and it's kind of hard to make sure that all of them get the proper screen time because you wouldn't want a 3.5 hour long murder mystery
No,
that would just
no,
dry
yeah,
you out. So
no, exactly. Yeah, like Walt's wife, like we didn't even talk about her. We didn't even bring her up. I think her
oh yeah,
Donna was her name. She like
she doesn't
she
really
wasn't
have a
really in it.
role. Yeah.
No, there's the one scene I actually forgot to bring it up because I thought it was hilarious. It's the one when they're just like all debating about Trump. Like they don't actually say his name, but they're just like talking
Right.
about
It's pretty obvious. Yeah.
like the immigration stuff and all that stuff. I thought that scene was hilarious because unfortunately I've been a part of just basically a witness of a lot of just debates on Donald Trump, and like
Family
he's just such a
gatherings.
divisive
Yeah.
like topic to talk about. I just thought that was hilarious that they had that in the film
Yeah,
and
it does a
just
good way of like
polar opposite.
painting all the characters and like
Yeah,
where
no,
they stand
exactly.
on that kind of thing.
Like we said, like Richard, like he's totally just like 100% in Team
Yeah.
Trump, and then
It's a quick
you
way
have
to
like
like paint
Jody
them
that's
on
just like
the
talking about
left to
like the
right
human
scale.
rights and like it's just hilarious.
Yeah,
So yeah,
definitely.
overall, I thought this was a fun film. Yeah, it was a fun film, good
Yeah,
cast, and I would recommend it to basically everyone I know.
awesome. Well,
Yeah, man.
that's gonna about do it for us on the knives. The knives are going back in. I don't
Nice
know.
going back.
That was kind of a weird
Knives are going
transition.
in.
The knives are out. The knives are out and about. They're done for. Um,
Yeah.
yeah, I guess we'll close it out with some plugs. Yeah, so I think this will be releasing the Friday of the 29th. So if you're listening to this on the day, you can check out our Mandalorian review, some Game Awards predictions. But next week we have some fun stuff as well, and just honestly, the rest of the year we have fun stuff. Even January, we have a bunch of fun plans coming up. So definitely stay tuned wherever you listen to podcasts, whether that's Apple Podcasts or Stitcher Radio or SoundCloud, Google Play, wherever it is. Definitely check out our Patreon where we always have some fun stuff going up there. You can get every episode ad free, as well as some special casts, as well as some of our retros, like sometimes months in advance. So definitely try to make it worth it for you guys. And then we have some fun kind of special stuff next year as well. That's definitely going to be going to Patreon as well. So that is going to about do it. Check out our Facebook, check out our Twitter, check it all out. Kirkland, thank you for joining me on this review. This was a fun
Absolutely, man. That was fun. We gotta
And,
do this more often.
one. That classic Chris Evans. Yeah, I got you. That's a good callback. And all right, man, I'm gonna see you tomorrow. So I'll see you tomorrow. And
Absolutely.
to the fans, hopefully I'll see you tomorrow as well. Have a good one.
Peace.
Later.